On the back of a plethora of shoddy AAA titles and the mainstream gaming industry looking much more like a casino, red loot boxes, than an arcade, a question should arise in our minds. Do video games suck now? Well, to be honest, a better rendition of that question should be, do video games suck now as compared to earlier? And I'll take a gander that your immediate thought was yes, yes, they do suck now. When you hear the phrase the current video game industry, you may think about video games with insidious elements of gambling wrapped up in an innocent looking package known as loot boxes. You may also think about completely unfinished and broken games being shipped early to record annual profits, a la Cyberpunk 2077 or Battlefield 2042. Games about the future broken on release. Kind of ironic, isn't it? Better yet, if you identify as a critical gamer, you may aptly describe the current video game industry as a bunch of bloated open world games that deceive you into doing arduous chores disguised as gameplay. Well, let's look at some Reddit comments that may summarize your thoughts as well. On the RPC Gaming subreddit, there was a post about a research paper which discussed that millennials, damn coffee drinkers, as the boomers would say, play video games much more than Gen Z. I have never wanted to be associated as a millennial more than today. And no such inflammatory article goes unnoticed by the Redditors. The comment section was a war of truth, because having an opinion doesn't exist on Reddit. Either you're right or you're wrong. One such comment read, "No wonder. They're growing up with games as a service garbage. Full price, soulless, unfinished messes of games full of microtransactions that have a shelf life of 12 months at most." In the same vein, another editor commented, "It really is a tragedy. The soulless corporate assholes pushing games as a service really have won the war already. We've now got a generation of adults that have never known anything but manipulative and predatory AAA games." Oof, those damn corporates, they've ruined the gaming industry completely. Or have they? Let's take a critical look at what the current gaming industry really is, while keeping our dear Redditors' opinions in mind. Now, I will be the first to call it as I see it. There is no question that within the gaming industry there are various greedy actors who abuse their devs with heinous crunch practices, making them work long hours while not paying them enough. At the same time, ignoring those same devs when they warn that the game is not ready to ship. They then release the game in order to bring up their quarter sales and meet targets. By the way, as a finance student, some of these public corporations have to do this, otherwise, due to the legal system of shareholder wealth maximization, the entire upper management can be fired. It's an interesting topic to explore in another video, but not in this one. The most notorious of these actors are companies like EA, Ubisoft, Activision Blizzard, and many more. However, these are the big bad guys. But so what? There are always negative elements in any sample or population. Why are we so inclined to only pay attention to the negatives and completely ignore the positives? In the second Reddit comment I read earlier, it specifically targets AAA games. Yes, AAA games are in most cases unfinished, broken, and riddled with microtransactions, no doubt about it. But are all AAA games like that? What about recent game releases such as The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and soon hopefully its sequel, Elden Ring, Sekiro, Ghost of Tsushima, God of Monster Hunter World, and Ragnarok, Hogwarts Legacy, 7 and 8, Doom 2016, Doom Eternal, and the list goes on and on and on. Hell, though they might be riddled with microtransactions and loot boxes, games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Overwatch 1 and 2, and the like are also really good games if you ignore the other aspects I mentioned. They do not suck, they are very much playable and enjoyable. Are you going to tell me that the games I listed are hot garbage compared to the golden age? I have a feeling you will. So leave a comment below and let's start the war. These games are wonderfully crafted stories with unique and tailored gameplay and technical systems powered by the advancing technology that we are witnessing year on year. Without a qualm, these are love children, is that even a phrase, of extremely talented game designers and developers dripping with creativity and are undeniably great games by objective measures. Now hold on a minute, I know exactly what you're thinking. If you are that critical gamer that I mentioned earlier, you will call these games hot garbage, boring, and bloated open world games without any good gameplay or story, filled with chores disguised as side quests. See, I read another Reddit comment that mentions the same thing. Quote, "It's extremely subjective. I dislike open world games and I dislike narrative driven games where story is equal to or priority over the actual gameplay. I also hate crafting mechanics and most examples of melee combat in third person over the shoulder perspectives, especially if the combat is based on parries. To compete with the old gold standards, ditch these stupid sprawling open worlds, and if you insist on telling a story, find ways to do it that don't involve badly written directed cutscenes or rooting around in piles of rubbish looking for miscellaneous bits of obscure lore. The games you mentioned cannot be fixed. Their design is fundamentally flawed for me." My dear editor above was a pleasure to talk to, because at least he had the decency to admit something. Subjectivity. Are you like the redditor above? Do you hate what he hates, such as open world games, narrative driven games, crafting intensive games, games with over the shoulder combat like Monster Hunter and Soulsborne series? You do? So here we get to the crux of the discussion. Here is an objective fact. Most of the critically appraised video games that have come out recently contain mechanics such as those listed above. Here is a subjective opinion. These games suck. No, my dear redditor, viewer, or reader, these games do not suck. They suck to you. And that's completely okay. You don't like the critically acclaimed games of this generation? You are totally entitled to your own assessments, feelings, and opinions. However, these games most definitely do not suck. Just as much as you hate these games, there are millions upon millions that are in love with them. You may like more arcadey type games, more games focused on gameplay than anything else, or some other factor that the games of old had versus the games released today. This might be a bit harsh. It may also be the case that you are clouded by nostalgia, but anyway. So maybe look for the latest games that harken back to that era of video games, and maybe they might fit your cultured tastes. I mean, games like Forgive Me Father, like the old Doom, Tripang Square, like Fear, and Hollow Body, like old RE or Silent Hill games, draw conspicuous inspiration from these older games. They're right there, guys, you just have to search for them. Just because these critically acclaimed games are not to your liking, or a handful of the publishers are greedy bastards who riddle their games with infuriating monetization techniques, does not mean the video games industry as a whole suck now. There is so much more I can say, and I will say in future videos. However, let me just remind you of two things. The first and foremost, indie games. I don't know how so many of these cynics overlook something that the new era of video games have brought. That something is the ability for small teams with brilliant ideas and the right amount of passion to fuel those ideas and release those ideas in indie games for us to enjoy. Now publishing is no longer kept via big publishers who will refuse to publish a game based on their curious standards or whims, any creative individual or team can connect to the hordes of gamers with ease in the modern era. I mean, just look at games like Valheim, Stardew Valley, Hades, Deep Rock Galactic, Dead Cells, Ultraviolet, Sons of the Forest, Coffee Talk, and so many more. The indie space is exploding with creativity, brimming in all aspects from graphics to gameplay to story, and I mean my personal number one loved video game that I cannot sadly experience ever again is Outer Wilds. I implore you to buy it and start playing it without any reviews if you're interested in an extremely unique way for exploration and storytelling. I'm telling you, trust me, you will not regret this game. The second thing I must remind you of is simply free shit. I mean it. I don't know about you, but growing up without access to video game consoles or strong PCs and $60 tagged video games did not allow me to play many games. Well, I did live in a third world country where no one knew the difference between a pirated versus original game, so I did have an opportunity to play many video games later in life. But when I was a child, I grew up on Miniclip. I'll say that again. Miniclip. Do you know what that is? You don't? Oh, go search it up. And then tell me if there's a difference between free games now versus then. I can't imagine playing games like Fortnite, Apex Legends, Halo, Overwatch, Valorant, etc. for free. These games are by all means quality games that could have asked for a $40 to $60 price tag, according to the old standards. But they're free now. Who cares about microtransactions? I don't. I just hop on, play a few games, and I'm out. 10-year-old me could have never imagined this existing, but now we take this for granted. So yeah, do video games suck? Let me not hear the end of it in the comments below, and you bet your ass I am coming back with rebuttals, because God knows I have the free time and passion to reply to YouTube comments and Reddit comments. Goodbye.